So we're going to go over to our panel of current trainees to give you an insight into what it's like to be on and manage the programme. So we should have with us, and some of you might have met some of these already in those breakout sessions. So we should have Laura, Regina, Eduardo, Diane, and Rachel. I think they're all here. If I double check on my list, it looks like it. So if we go round each of you, first of all, so that you can obviously introduce yourselves, but also obviously share your specialism, although I've got it on screen there, I'm quite aware, and to share one piece of advice you wish you had been given before you started the programme. So if we start with Laura. Is Laura there? Oh, I don't know if she is. Oh, she is. She's just got no mic, so I've silenced her. Sorry, Laura. Let's allow you. I'll allow your camera too. There you go, Laura.
Thank you. Yes, hi everyone. So my name's Laura Eastwood. I have just finished HSST. I'm just going through all the exit paperwork at the moment, and I am in transfusion science. That's my specialism. So you asked for a piece of advice as well. So my piece of advice would be something that one of my colleagues said to me actually when I was probably about halfway through the course. He said, make sure you take the time to celebrate your achievements and celebrate those milestones. This is such a busy, packed, intensive course, and you will be achieving amazing things while you're doing this course, but there's always something else to do. So for example, we were talking about FRC Path in that last breakout session. When you've done FRC Path, you've got to go on to FRC Path 2, but make sure that's a huge achievement, passing those exams. So or the A modules, or doing your research project and all the other things as well along the way. So make sure you take the time to stop and celebrate what you've done.
Thank you, Laura. And Regina?
Hi, everybody. So my name is Regina, and I'm a haematology clinical science trainee in my 5th year based in Bristol. So the one piece of advice that I would probably give is to get to know your standards of proficiency and your curriculum quite well earlier on. It can be challenging to keep reverting back to it once things pick up and, you can't keep track of where you are with things like that, even though you will have meetings with your supervisor to try and keep track of your training. It might be wise to try and set yourself some quarterly goals to kind of say, okay, after this amount of time, this is what I'd like to achieve. And then revert back to that and check in to see, okay, I've done this, I've done that. Is there anything else that I need to do? But you'll only be able to do that if you kind of know what it is that's required from you right at the onset, and also how that feeds into your day-to-day job. Because a lot of things, I think people have already said today, that a lot of things that you'll be doing will be meeting those standards, but it's about highlighting how you're gathering that evidence and putting it onto one file and then later mapping it, but just collecting things as you go and just keeping track for yourself.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Regina. And who have we got next? Eduardo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eduardo Marquez, and I'm just about to start the 4th year of HSST, or just started. And my piece of advice, I think a lot of people already talked about this, but 7.5 hours per week, the allocated 7.5 hours per week isn't enough to do all the work you need to do. So make sure you have some structure and make sure you break, the study time in small tasks. So for example, using the 7.5 hours per week for the declined psi, and then you can use regular smaller sessions of study throughout the week, like 1 hour or 2 hours per day, to do the one file portfolio. I think that's really useful to have some structure. And I would probably like, I don't know if this works for everyone, but for me it works because I find it really difficult to structure things. I get stuck very easily. So I do use a lot of AI tools to help me planning. Not everyone likes that, but for me it works. So if I have to do a few tasks, I sometimes I get overwhelmed. So I put everything, write down everything, and it just helps me plan and helps me to structure my study time, which otherwise would be a bit more difficult to track. So, and also make sure you connect with your colleagues. That for me, it's really, really crucial. For many reasons, because sometimes you just learn things that you wouldn't know otherwise. You can also socialize with your colleagues, which is really important, and even for the occasional cry, because you will need some. So I think that's really important to connect with other colleagues. Yeah. So I think that's my main advice.
Thank you, Eduardo. And Diane? I've allowed your camera and mic now, Diane.
Yeah, that's good advice so far. I'm Di Beekman, so I'm 5th year neurophysiology HSST, interruptive neurophysiology. I would say make sure and leave time to think. So it's a huge volume, it fluctuates. Sometimes you're just going to find it's overwhelmingly busy. And my clinical supervisor, Lloyd, told me this, and he said, make sure to take time to think, because you're writing and you're reading and you're taking in lots and lots of information. But if you don't give your brain a pause and a break, you'll not lay any of it down and you'll not remember any of it. So it's important just even to take a 10-minute walk, make a cup of tea, walk around the garden, take a deep breath, and then come back to it. Anytime you're feeling overwhelmed, and planning, what Eduardo said, planning is crucial. Lists and lists. Sometimes you have to write lists hour by hour, what you're going to do hour by hour, even day by day, week by week. My lists go on for months and they change all the time. But it makes me feel better if I'm feeling overwhelmed once I've written a list and taken some time out, then I feel better.
That's great. Thank you, Diane. And last but not least, Rachel.
Hello, my name's Rachel and I specialise in sleep and respiratory, and I'm based in Bristol. I've just started my 5th year, so a few things I was going to say have already been covered, so it's really good advice so far. But something someone had suggested to me quite early on is try and find someone in your specialism who's a year or a couple of years ahead of you. And I've got a colleague who works in a different trust but in the same specialism, and we try and touch base once or twice a year, just do a Teams call, and that sort of helped me almost prepare what's coming the year ahead, or if there's something I'm finding particularly challenging in the year at that moment, how did they manage that and how did they find that? And I've found that really useful as well, just to have someone that's already done the modules you're in the middle of doing. So that was quite useful advice I was given. But yeah, similar to what Diane said, just lists and prepare your time, and especially with the one file stuff, depending on what your roles are, some of what you're doing already, you can start uploading the evidence. So for me, I'm naturally quite a disorganized person, so I've had to be organized with HSST and sort of really tried implementing that. And once you start building that one file portfolio, it's looking how you can build on it from there.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. So we're going to open up shortly to use Slido for your questions for our panel. But as a starting point, I'm just going to ask some of the frequently asked questions that we have. So if I can start with you, Laura, how flexible is the programme? Does it mean that as a trainee, I could do any element at any time point?
Well, the easy answer to that is no, but there is still flexibility in the programme. And I think so some people have talked about this already when they were giving the advice about preparing and what do you need to know and things. So I would advise right at the beginning doing your gap analysis. What do you need to learn? What's your overall high level plan for the 5 years? Because you can't plan the full 5 years right at the beginning. That's just not going to happen. But you can have a high level one that you can then have a basic idea of when you're planning to do certain modules, certain assessments. And then you can try and fit that in. So then, for example, the A modules, you can split them over, you can condense them to 2 years, you can spread them out over 4 years. I personally did them over 2 years because I wanted to be able to concentrate on my research project later on. But also, as well, there was other things at work because at the time they were building a whole new the whole building was being knocked down and we were being moved to a new building elsewhere. So it's kind of trying to fit other things that are happening at the same time. So definitely look at what is flexible within the course, but bear in mind there are certain milestones that you have to achieve at certain times and that you have to complete what you need to complete by the end of the year. So I know in the life sciences, Lisa was talking about the exams and making sure you pencil in time for possible resits if you need to. So factoring that in as well when you're talking about your flexibility and your timings for things.
Thank you, Laura. And our next one is for Regina. Does everyone take 1 day a week every week as protected time?
So you're entitled to having 1 day a week, but how you take that is dependent on the trainee and also your department. So some people try to establish, okay, I'm going to have a Monday as my study day right from the onset, and they get that agreed, and that's their time set for, the rest of the program. Whereas other people, depending on the pressures of work or kind of like study pressures, might accrue some study leave. In discussion with their department to kind of say, okay, maybe around your exam time, you'll have 2 weeks off specifically for study. If you can be released from your work pressures and things. So it just depends on how you feel you want to go about things, and also how your workplace supervisor might feel about that. Because if you're in a role where you can't actually be taking 2 weeks off for study on top of annual leave, and you're then off for a whole month to be putting aside for your study time, it might not work out. But actually some people prefer the structure of having, this is my 1 day to study. But just to also reiterate what others have already said, actually that study time, even though it is 1 day, there is an element of you're going to have to potentially use evenings and weekends and things like that, depending on the time. So just bear that in mind.
Thank you, Regina. And then a question for you, Eduardo. What kind of evidence can you use for one file?
So in terms of types of evidence, I think the key is to think broadly. So, the HSST portfolio is designed to show your, development across different domains. So you need to upload evidence that's, mapped to all those domains. But you can upload all sorts of evidence, since the case-based discussions and multi-source feedback. But then it can also show other things like case studies that show like an analytical, interpretive skills in complex situations. Your own publications, if you have some conference presentations, quality improvement projects, things that link also with A units and B units. So any leadership and service developments, for example, implementing a new technique or changing the workflow, managing projects or supervising colleagues, all of those things are leadership, activities that you can use. Teaching and training evidence as well, and also reflective pieces where you analyze what you learn from your situation and how it change your practice, for example. And also you can even like external things like CPD courses and things that's also linked to those domains. So yeah, so all those things you can use it.
Thank you, Eduardo. And our next question is for Diane. Do I have complete control of the training allowance of £13,250 per year? Can I spend it on anything?
So first of all, it's really, really important to get oversight of this money, and that is the first thing you should do. It depends what position you have in the department. It was quite easy for me because I manage our budget anyway, so I have monthly meetings with our service, our financial partner. But for every set of trainees that come into the trust, a letter will come from NHS England along with, so it'll list the trainees and the commissioning associated with those trainees. So that letter will be sent with the departments who are hosting a trainee, and it'll also go to some of the financial people in the hospital. Get a hold of that letter or get a hold of the information on that letter so that you've got proof that the money is coming in. And this sounds so basic, but honestly, I've known so many trainees, second, third year, have still been trying to find this money. So the money is definitely coming into trust. If you've got a lead scientist, get onto them because they'll also have oversight of the money. It should be allocated to you and for your training. And I would encourage you to use it. There will be, we started during COVID, so we didn't have as much traveling as some of the other cohorts, but so there'll be a good bit of traveling, expenses and things like that. But also think about software packages you might need, think of equipment you might need, like we bought a magnetic stimulator, arm and coil, which are about £10,000. Think about statistical analysis software that might be useful for your research projects. And it's a good idea to start thinking about that as soon as you can, because then you can make a little plan with your financial manager about money that you might need to spend over the years. In terms of spending on anything you want, I think someone's always going to have to sign it off in the trust, and that can be a bit of a challenge. If I'm signing it off for my staff, it's all whatever I'm signing off as part of their PDP. My line manager is not clinical, so I do find that I have to justify what I'm spending a lot. And the new AI, if I'm buying anything to do with AI, any packages like that I'm using for my university work, they're really twitchy, they're really funny about that. So be prepared to justify everything and maybe have someone else on side that can back you up, like someone else on HSST or a clinical manager who's managing someone on HSST, just to sort of validate what you're asking for and why you're asking for it. But yeah, it will always be a struggle to get stuff signed off, but the money is for your training, and as long as it's associated with your training, you should be able to spend it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Diane. And excuse me, for Rachel, do I need to attend the university face-to-face workshops?
So the good thing with HSST, certainly in the first 2 years, is the sort of modules and lectures are very much a hybrid model between face-to-face and online. So what I certainly found is the face-to-face ones have been designed that way for you to get the most out of it in person. And also it's a good opportunity to meet other trainees, and the way the sort of breakout rooms work is you quite often mix with other trainees from different specialisms. So that's also quite good because everyone comes with different perspectives, as well as you then getting the chance to meet trainees in person in your specialism. So I'm in the same cohort as Di, and we started September 2021, so we were sort of still within a bit of COVID restrictions, and our first year was I think it was online the whole year, and personally I found that quite challenging because you do feel a bit isolated because you don't know anyone that's on the training program at the same time as you. So I've definitely found things a bit easier when we have met people in person. And it just gives a good opportunity to also meet some of the lecturers as well in person. So that being said, though, there are some modules where we have had some colleagues that with exceptional circumstances for various reasons weren't able to travel, and there has been a little bit of flexibility where they were able to join remotely, but that's down to each module, and you do need to sort of check that through the school or the person leading the module. But I know some colleagues have been quite supported when they haven't been able to attend, but again it's down to specific modules, but overall it's a good balance.
Thank you, Rachel. And this is just sort of a final question from me before we go on to the questions from the audience. So anyone who wants to volunteer for this one, and we can hear a few tips from different people, but what tips do you have for managing your own health and well-being whilst on the programme? So does anyone want to volunteer some tips?
Well, I think, as like I mentioned before, like being structured with your study time, I think you need to be equally structured with your mental health and physical health. So for me, I mean, and this is very, individual thing, but for me, spending time with my family and doing some exercise and listening my music is like oxygen. So I really, really need to have some time, even if it's not like a great amount of time, but I need to have some time to do that. And there's some time that I always reserve for that. And when I don't have as much time as I would like, I start to feel that tension coming up, and that's when things start to go wrong. So be strict with yourself as well.
Thank you, Eduardo. That's really important. Thank you. And Laura?
I think it's really key to have a good support network around you as well. So whether it's outside of work with family and friends that you can talk to, whether it's colleagues, other HSSTs as well, your own discipline or outside of discipline, whoever's in your cohort as well, get to know not just your own discipline, but others as well within your cohort, just so that you can talk to people, because if you're feeling something, someone else will be feeling that as well. So don't feel that you're alone. I'd also recommend getting, if you can, a good relationship with your supervisor, your HSST supervisor, so that if you are getting to a point where you feel a bit overwhelmed or you're not sure where to turn next, that you can go to them early on. Don't let it fester. Go to them and say, what's your advice here?
Thank you, Laura. That's fantastic. Did anyone else want to add any more at all with that one? Rachel?
I think just to echo what Laura said, so within our cohort, there's a few of us in similar and the same disciplines, and ultimately we've just got a WhatsApp group, and that's been really, really helpful, especially when we were having deadlines back to back and almost reminding each other what's coming up next, or if you need to double check something, that's been really helpful. So yeah, it's similar to what Laura had said, but just to sort of echo that really.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Rachel. And I think, yeah, you can't underestimate that importance of having that network between you as well. Yeah, definitely. Regina?
Just a small thing to add is you should just be kind to yourself. I think the HSST is just a challenging program in itself. Like there's going to be a lot of work you're going to have to put in. It's going to challenge you mentally, physically, all of it. It's going to be a lot of pressure because you're juggling academic, you're juggling OneFar, you're juggling family. Some of you might have young kids. I know I do. You might have dependents, and you can't give 100% all the time for the next 5 years. Like things will peak, things will kind of like ebb and flow. And so you just have to be realistic about what you can and can't do at certain times, and just know that you will get to the next thing and be able to achieve it without putting too much pressure on yourself. So being kind to yourself, and also just to reiterate that if you are struggling, then speak to people about it. There'll be a lot of people who are in your position or have been there or know how best to support you, your family, your friends, your workplace supervisors, your colleagues. Just say something about it, because you might think, oh, I'm struggling, nobody can help me, but they might be able to signpost you to something that will be able to help you. Or it might be, take that walk, go on a long walk, just, de-stress, do whatever it is that kind of fills your cup and allows you to also just, take time out if you need to, but ultimately say something and be kind to yourself.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Regina. That's a really nice way to finish that one. So what we'll do, we'll go to our questions. So we've got some already come up. So if I start with the top, and if you want to answer, just use the raise hand function, that's fine. think this was touched on, but can I use already gained experience in service development into my OneFile, then build on this over the years? Does anyone want to answer that one?
I can try.
Thank you.
I don't think you can use legacy stuff. I think it all has to be new and gained experience. I mean, you can build on what you've already done and you can talk about that in your OneFile, but I think as far as I know, everything it has to be from scratch, everything in your OneFile. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees with that as far as I know.
I think that was my Oh, I can see Lisa's put her hand up, so maybe she'll know better than me.
Yeah, so it is possible to use, if you've done a particular project that you think is really, really relevant to a specific standard proficiency prior to starting, you could put that into OneFile, but what you then have to do is build upon it. So you have to show that how you've continued utilizing those skills, so it's not just something that I did 10 years ago and now I never have to worry about again. It should be something that you are continually doing. So I do know some people have used things from prior to starting the program, but it should be relatively recent and it should be something that you're still building upon. And make use of that narrative box in OneFile if you're going to do that, to explain the reason why you've done it. But yeah, generally the majority of the evidence going in will be stuff that you generate whilst on the programme.
Thank you both. In the 52 days study leave is the 52 days study leave inclusive or additional to the university days? Any offers?
For me, it was additional to the university days. I'm not sure if that's the same experience for everyone, but that was my experience, and I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, Lisa's nodding, so that we've got that approval as well. Yeah, and Regina's nodding too, so that's fab. How have you sourced learning of techniques or conditions outside of your department's typical remit? How much knowledge or skill is deemed sufficient for HSST?
So for me, I did shadowing. So the organisation I work for isn't hospital based, and when I had to do anything that was patient facing, I went and shadowed medical consultants within hospitals. We've also kind of repaid that favour, so we do some specialist work that isn't done within a hospital. So we've had HSSTs come and shadow us and our medical consultant as well. As my interpretation of how much knowledge and skills is deemed sufficient. So if you need to show, it's good to put it in your OneFile, do a reflection on it, show that you understand it, what you've been taught. If it's part of your day-to-day role, then no one is expecting you to become a world-leading expert in an area that you don't work in.
Thank you, Laura. Did anyone want to add to that at all? No? Okay. Has any one of you had a workplace supervisor who was not a consultant clinical scientist? And are there any challenges you've had to overcome?
I don't mind starting with this one. So when I started HSST, we did have a consultant clinical scientist in the department who has since retired. So I've gone from having that support to now I don't have that support, and I have found that quite a challenge. I've got a medical consultant now as my supervisor who offers lots of other positives and specialisms, and that helps, but I am sort of missing that healthcare scientist specific role, and it's just how you look at that. So I've also looked at other consultant clinical scientists in the trust or other specialism just to try and get a bit of support that way. In an ideal world, you would probably have a consultant clinical scientist, but it's not. I know there's lots of trainees that don't have that as their main supervisor, so I'm not sure how others have found it. But
thank you, Rachel. Laura?
Yeah, so the CCS role is quite new in my specialism, so it's quite common, I think, in my area that there aren't any CCSs to be supervisors. How we got around it for my training is I had two supervisors. I had one that was lab-based, who's helped more with kind of the managerial side of things and service development. And then I had a medical consultant as well. And I have to say our medical consultants, because they've seen where we can help and support them, they've been our best advocates really as well. That's not to say it hasn't been without challenges, because I said it's new in our area, so it's always been kind of figuring out what we're supposed to be doing, but hopefully now we can pass that on to the next cohorts.
Thank you, Laura. And Regina?
Yeah, so I've had quite a challenging time in that when I first started HSST, my workplace supervisor wasn't a consultant, but they were quite a senior, like high-level scientist, and they kind of fulfilled that role and were able to until he then retired a couple of years into my training program, so similar to Rachel. And then since then, the person who took on that role is actually a laboratory manager, but in conjunction with our medical consultant, which seemed like it doesn't really fulfill kind of like the support that I needed. So since that time, I managed to get a mentor who is a consulting clinical scientist, somebody who's been through HSST, and she's kind of helping to feed into my training and support in that way from outside the department. So within the department, I feel like I'm still able to kind of like achieve everything that I need to from the input that I'm getting, but I'm also getting like a good sense check from the consulting clinical scientist outside the department.
Oh, that's really interesting, Regina. That's great. So just out of interest, how did you make contact with that person outside of your department?
So it's just networking. So from when I did my part one, just knowing who is in hematology, who's gone before us, who, you know, like Lisa was saying, who's on the examination panel. So just having those contacts, you can then hopefully later call on them if there is anything that you need. And she was quite willing to help because she's been through it. And, you know, what better person to kind of like help guide, especially when trying to define a role at the end of it. So similar to many other people, there's not many consulting clinical scientists, and I am the first HSST in my department. So actually having somebody who's kind of paved their way in their own department, feeding into what potentially you could do, has been really useful.
Yeah, it's really valuable, that, isn't it? I think that's really useful for people to hear. Thank you, Regina. And Diane?
Yeah, I think when you're picking your clinical supervisor, if you get to, or you have an input, it's definitely good to have someone who understands your role and that can help you develop into your consultant scientist role at the end. So it's kind of sometimes it's a trade-off between someone who knows HSST really well and someone who's actually going to help you develop your clinical skills and move you towards a consultant scientist. And I think to do that work, so to look at your job description, it's really difficult to know what your job will look like in 5 years' time. But I would advise to anybody starting HSST to start looking at their job description and start writing your job description for your consultant clinical scientist role at the very beginning, and start to have those conversations. In our trust, we have a little group of our HSST trainees who we have a WhatsApp group. There's only a few of us, and we get together and we get together for coffee every now and again and sort of support each other that way as well. So because my clinical supervisor is a consultant, is a medic who knows nothing about HSST. So there is a lot of hand holding. But I'm not that worried about doing that because I know I've got the support from my colleagues, and actually she's a really good mentor to me. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts.
Thank you all of you. And this kind of leads us to something that you've already mentioned, Diane, about sort of your role and your job description. But does anyone have experience of doing the HSST when they're not already in a senior role in their department? Was it difficult to gather some of the evidence? Does anyone want to answer that? Diane, have you still got your hand? Is it a legacy hand?
Yeah, it's a legacy hand, and I was already sorry, I was already a service manager when I started, and actually Rachel and I talk about this often because we feel quite privileged to be in that position because we're already doing some of that leadership stuff and managing
Yeah.
budgets and service development, and we do all that naturally. And I know some of our colleagues have really struggled to do that, but they've done it, and they've just, they've led projects, they've ran audits, they've done innovation. Just because you're not in a senior position, it doesn't mean you can't do it with the right support.
Yeah, thank you, Diane.
Yeah, definitely. And, as Dan said, we've sort of spoken quite a lot about this, but I think if you're not already in a senior role, you just sort of have to think of actually what can I do either within my role, or can I do any shadowing, or can I attend any meetings and reflect on that? So as much as I'm in sort of a lead role, I, don't necessarily have experience in like the non-clinical management side of things. So I've asked some of our management team, look, can I sit in some of the finance meetings, or can I sit in various meetings? And my plan is to then sort of look and reflect on that and upload that as evidence. So it makes it a bit easier when you're in a role where you can just upload your daily routine, but it's definitely doable. It's just thinking of how you can make it work and what evidence you can use.
Thank you, Rachel. And Laura?
So I was in a similar position to Diane and Rachel, but we have, in our organisation, we do have HSSTs that have been taken on, not that are in senior positions beforehand. And I think what I'm going to say kind of applies to whether you are in a senior position or not, that your role will change over the 5 years because your experiences, whether it's clinical or non-clinical, they're going to develop. You're going to be given more responsibilities, and towards the end of the 5 years, you're almost doing exactly what you would be doing as a consultant clinical scientist. So it does change over the years.
Thank you all of you for that. Is it fair if my trust are making me do CPD courses on my study day, so I lose a study day? Anyone want to respond?
Yeah.
Edward?
I think, the short answer is you should control your study time for sure. However, there's a bit of a gray area here. So it's CPD. If it is a CPD course that aligns with the competencies for one file, for example, I think there's an opportunity here to, for you as well. But yeah, I think you should ultimately control your study time for sure.
Thank you, Eduardo. Rachel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just something similar to what Eduardo said. So it's, what are the CPD courses, and are they things that you can use as evidence? Is it role specific, or, is it something like mandatory training, which is then different? But depending what they are, you could think of that as using that as time towards evidence. I had huge challenges with a study day when I first started HSST with my trust, and it is difficult, and I really, really had to fight for my study day, even though I was already on the course and enrolled. So I would, have a chat with your sort of line managers and managers within your division just to check how that should be used, and just keep referring them back to the national school sort of website. And I had some support from the national school in just confirming what these study days were for, but it might be that you can use that stuff.
Thank you, Rachel. That's brilliant. Have any of you got experience of having to take time out of the programme? If so, how was that facilitated? Was it manageable? Has anyone had experience of that at all? Eduardo?
So I didn't have to take time out, but I did think about taking time out in year 2. And that option was available, but in the end, I just extended the deadlines of some of the units, and that was really, it wasn't, everyone was very, comprehensive with me and facilitated, and was not a problem in the end. So I managed just to do everything by extending some deadlines of some specific units. But I know that some people did take some out for maternity leave and things like that.
Yeah. I don't know, Lisa, did you want to add anything to that, just in terms of, I will mention it later in my bit, but I just wondered if you would.
Yeah, so there are processes both with the university and through the national school if you do need to take time out from the program. So I would say if you're in that position, get in touch. If it's just specifically about a particular deadline for the university, then I would say contact the university and have a chat with them about that. If it's more about the total length of the program and actually being able to engage with any parts of the program, then get in touch with me and Owen, and we'll have a chat and sort of talk through the process to either sort of extend or take a step off from the program. But that's definitely available.
Thank you both. Do people struggle more if they are from departments that aren't accredited, e.g. IQEPs, or departments that are smaller or not training departments? Anyone want to or able to offer a response to that?
So I wouldn't say we are accredited and we're not small and we are a training lab, but I think that's where it shows that you need to reach out to your network, reach out to those in your cohort, that reach out to others in your discipline, because we have taken people in to give them an experience in areas that they might not be able to deal with. And I know our consultants as well, and like I said, consultants at the hospitals, they've also helped. So definitely reach out to your networks.
Thank you, Laura. That's brilliant. Rachel?
So we are a big department and we're a teaching hospital, but we're not IQEPS accredited. So I would look to see how you can use that to your advantage. So we, as a department and as a trust, we're reviewing what current sort of SOPs practice and things we're doing at the moment, and looking at pieces of work to get to accreditation. So it's whether you've got scope within your role or within the department to look at, for example, reviewing your SOPs or reviewing your processes, and can you be involved in working towards IQEPs? And that's what I've sort of been using some evidence for. So that might be useful, and also having a look within your trust to see is there a plan for the wider trust to apply for that rather than just your department.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you both. We've got time for the last two, I think. Has anyone worked on other qualifications simultaneously, if I can say it, at all? So they've given some examples there in terms of radiation safety, but considering your different backgrounds, did you do any other training or qualifications? Regina?
Sorry,
were you going to say something, Laura?
When you go first.
Okay. So at the start of when I first started, because I came in from a kind of like laboratory-based clinical scientist role, and I felt like to be able to get to a point of where I felt confident to be taking the Royal College exams, I needed a bit more scientific input. So for life sciences, we don't get any taught modules. So you kind of have to do your own learning and, link in with whatever you can to achieve that. So I did a postgrad qualification at the same time in clinical science bio. So it was a postgrad diploma, not a whole MSc, but just to get my head back into knowing where I was in terms of like my scientific knowledge, and then hopefully then building on that for the Royal College exams. But it's not something that I would recommend if you don't need to do it. I think each person will kind of know where they're at in terms of like their knowledge base and their experience, and whether they need to do anything like that, but you obviously don't need to.
Wow, Regina, you're brave. Well done.
I nearly didn't make it.
Oh, Laura.
Yeah, so I did the Top Digital Fellowship at the same time as doing HSST. The reason I did that though was because my research project was looking at virtual reality, developing virtual reality, and I'd project manage. I'm sure if you've worked anywhere that's managing people, you'll have managed projects and things like that. However, I'd never done it specific to digital, so that's why I enrolled in that, and it also was a little bit of extra funding as well towards my project. Kind of to echo what Regina said though, it was hard trying to do everything at the same time. It was definitely beneficial for me because it meant that I was given the skills forward digital development that I didn't have before, and it saved me time that way. But to do both at the same time was definitely challenging.
Oh, thank you both. That's really interesting. What has been, so the final question, what has been your biggest area of growth through your HSST journey so far? So who would like to volunteer a response for that?
I don't mind starting. So for me, it's definitely resilience. If I'm being completely honest,
I like Diane's laughing. I can see she's laughing.
Yeah, Diane and I have spoken quite a lot over the last 4 years, and it's not easy, and there are times where you think, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do it anymore, and you'll be, you know, for me now, I'm doing my research project, and the setbacks I've had even trying to get that off the ground, and I've just thought, I'm too far in it now, you've just got to keep going. But I'm definitely a lot more resilient, and it also helps with your problem solving skills. That is a lot of it as well, and sort of how you manage workload and work-life balance and everything really. But yeah, for me, resilience came to mind as soon as I saw that question.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for being so open and honest too, Eduardo.
Yeah, I think resilience is very important. But apart from that, I think one thing that's changed my perspective a little bit since I started the HSST. You know, before the HSST, I was very focused on my own world inside the neurophysiology world and the things we could do. And now that we are more involved with research and we network with other professionals, I just looked at everything more broadly. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we can do that I wouldn't even imagine before HSST. So I think was really changed my mindset completely.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Eduardo. And Laura?
Probably similar to what the others have said. I would kind of word it as getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. You're constantly having to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to push yourself forward to things, to get your evidence, to learn something new, to go and speak to people, doing all the networking. But if I look back now at when I was on the induction and some of the things I'm doing now, yeah, I don't think I would have imagined that back then.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really great to hear as well. And we've come to the end of our questions. So unless there's anything else anybody wanted to share at all, it just for me to say thank you so much for giving up your time and sharing your experience. So also helping before, supporting the breakout sessions too. But these are the most valuable aspects of our induction, we find. So hearing from current trainees and the alumni as well. So thank you so much. It means such a lot to our trainees. So thank you to Laura, Regina, Eduardo, Rachel and Diane. Thank you.